Welcome to the tutorial of inline functions. So inline functions are the functions actually which starts from the inline reserve keyword. So let's see an example and then we will see how inline functions works inside a program. So let me introduce the user defined function which finds actually the maximum of two variables. Okay, so this is the parameter list. We have integer a separated by a comma, integer b. So this function will find the maximum of the two numbers. So let's define the function and introduce the logic inside the function to calculate the maximum of two variables. So when we pass these two arguments or parameter into the function, maximum function, this function will compare those two values. Okay, if a, the value inside variable a, is greater than the value inside variable b, so this function will return a. A is the return type, is also integer. So we have the variable a is integer while b is also integer. Okay, so if the condition is true, it will return a. So and if the condition is false, so it will return the value of b. Okay, so this is the actually the logic to find out the maximum value while implementing the if else condition. Okay, we can make it more simple by introducing the tertiary operator, where we will use the conditional statement, okay, then the question mark and the colon. Okay, so what does it mean? It means that if the condition is true, then a should be executed, a. Okay, and if condition is false, then b shall be executed. So what we are doing with a and b, either of a or b is executed, we return that value through return statement through this gateway, okay, from this function. So this function is actually find out the maximum of the two variable. Okay, so now we need to call this function inside the body of the main function. So for example, in the main function, we want to find out the maximum of 20 and 10. Okay, so this statement will be printed as it is on the console output, while we are calling here the maximum function, which is the user defined function, while passing two parameters, two arguments, that is 10 and 20. So the processing will come to the maximum function, and this function will calculate the maximum of the two variable, that is 10 and 20, and it will return one of these values. We can also call it again and again, so it depends on the needs of the programming or the problem. Okay, so what actually happens here is each time the processor will jump from this statement to the user defined function, and then it will come back to execute other statements like this one. Okay, and then again the execution will come to the user defined function. After processing this execution will come back to the main function to execute next statement, and in the next statement execution will jump to the maximum function again, and when the maximum function executed, then the execution will come back to the main function and it will return 0 as successful completion of the main function. Okay, so this is how the processor actually works, that jumping from main function to the user defined function. So it actually overload the processing of the processor. So we want to reduce this overload of the processor by introducing the inline reserve keyword. Remember, this is the inline reserve keyword just before the header of the function definition. So what inline actually perform here is that during compilation, the inline statement direct the compiler to copy the logical code, the business logic code, or the code inside the body of the function, the user defined function. Just copy it, okay, and paste it here in the called function where it is being called. Okay, so it means that compiler then replace the variable, the first variable, with first argument, just like this. Okay, and the second parameter with the second argument, and just delete this one. So this is what the compiler actually performed then if you introduce the inline function. Similar is the case with the second statement, the second calling. So here the compiler replaces the first variable with first argument and the second variable with the second argument. The same process is actually performed with the third calling as well. Here we can change accordingly. Okay, so this is done now. So this is what actually compiler performed before compilation and before translating it into the machine language. Okay, so now the burden of calling a function during execution is reduced by copying the actual code of the user defined function into the main function where the user defined function was called. Okay, so this concept is known as inline function. So let's build this program and execute this and see the result. Okay, it gave us the error because we are using operator, okay, the conditional operator here. So we need to enclose this whole statement into parentheses just like this. So we will do it for other statement as well. So now the compiler will hopefully not give us any error. Yes. Okay, here you can see that the first statement gave us the result as 20 of the tertiary operator as a conditional operator, while the second statement gave us 300 and the third statement gave us the result 3003. Okay, so if we call that function as we have seen previously and then execute the program, so what will happen? This was the calling code, the user defined function. Okay, and let's see to build and run it, and again you can see that the result is very similar, you know 20, 300, and 303. So in this case, the code compiler actually copied this code in the called position, okay, in all the called position, just like we have seen before this. So this concept actually reduced the burden of the processor by jumping from one place to another place.